transfer talk. We've got loads to discuss with the team this lunchtime. On the way, we talk Manchester United, Manchester City, Leicester, Newcastle, Burnley and much, much more. You can tweet the show at Sky Sports News and use the hashtag transfer talk. A reminder, you can download the latest Transfer Talk podcast right now on iTunes, Spreaker and the Sky Sports website. But let's get straight to Manchester United, because on Good Morning Transfers we told you that Jesse Lingard will now be represented by super agent Mino Raiola, which, as you may expect, has posed questions about his future. This is what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had to say earlier this morning about Lingard.
Jesse's had his ups and downs, as I've spoke about before. But last game, say the game against City, and Tottenham, them two games, they're the examples on how important he can be for us, Jesse, in different games. Of course, we want him back, scoring goals, making assists. There's no one who runs as much as Jess. He is a great trigger for us in the pressing. He's a lively, bubbly character, and I don't think you see as much in the social media as you used to do with Jess. He's got his head down and working hard.
Right, OK, so Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to get Lingard back to his best. All right, JD, can he do that at Manchester United, or does he need a move at this stage of his career?
I'm torn. You can see in my indecision in terms of my decision, but I would turn around and say he still can do that at Man United. He still adds value to that squad because of the components that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just spoke about in terms of that work rate, that industry, there's things as well that's deeper than just the field. He brings a lot with his energy and his personality off of the field, which will gel that dressing room, and especially those key players that you want to talk about, you want to keep, such as Paul Pogba. Now, I know what everyone's going to reiterate and focus on, which is the lack of goals and the lack of assists for an attacking player. And yeah, I think even Jesse Lingard will probably admit he wants to improve on those statistics. But at the same time, I feel that there's so much pressure that is on Manchester United players, especially when they get promoted from the academy. Especially being, like, you look at Rashford, you look at Lingard, you look at Pogba, they're meant to be the staple points, the poster boys for Manchester United, all coming and being promoted from the academy, and yet they get the highest amount of scrutiny. It's just a modern day Manchester United that's not in a good sort of environment at this moment in time. And looking at a positive person like Jesse Lingard, that's the type of person you want to keep around you and kind of revamp his form more than anything else.
In terms of his form, Dave, I mean, 18 months or so ago, he was playing for England at the World Cup and he was absolutely brilliant. So why is it that Gareth Southgate gets the best out of him when he's on international duty?
Well, he was a mainstay, wasn't he, of that terrific run at the World Cup 2018, England reaching the semi-finals, playing in a 3 in midfield. We've got some stats, though, as to how the last year has unfolded, really, for Jesse Lingard, and these are them here. We've got them here, and you look at his stats from 2018-19. At this point in the season, he got 4 goals and 2 assists, similar number of games, but then obviously you look at this season and it hasn't been as productive for Jesse Lingard, so it's very difficult. And probably he would agree as to what JD was saying there, that he hasn't been at his best. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer himself has said we need the old Jesse Lingard back. And, you know, he's probably changed agent. You look at the whole headline today about the change of agent. May or may not have come about because of the friendship he has with Paul Pogba, and Mino Raiola is Paul Pogba's agent. But then also you can't really argue, Raiola gets results for his clients, whether it be a move, whether it be a contract renewal. Jesse Lingard's contract, I believe, is up in 2021 with an option of a further year. So if he's looking for a good renewal, then why not get one of the best agents that operates in the world? He's 27 now as well, so it's a really crucial period of his career, Jesse Lingard. And if you're looking at his performances, we looked at his stats there, but I wonder whether Manchester United fans could reel off a list of players who've overperformed, say, over the last 18 months to 2 years. Maybe Marcus Rashford would be the one. But there's not many, I would say, Manchester United players that fans would pick out and say, well, he's well overperformed over the last two to 3 years.
Away from that, and I know it's easy to turn around and bog ourselves down on statistics, but speaking to players, when you go away on international duty, it almost feels like you're away from your normal surroundings, your normal setup. So it's a break away from their mental reprieve all the time. Whereas when you are in that Manchester United setup, their focuses can be on the pressures that's outside of the club and inside of the club as well. So it's a lot different mentality-wise in terms of playing for England and playing for Manchester United. He's going to be with a lot more of his peers in terms of like people that he culturally has grown up with from the youth system all the way through. And not to speak on it for too long, but I know for a fact that he's had personal issues that's happened to him in terms of with his family. So him as a man is changing all the time at home. And ask anybody, us as 4 men here or 5 men on the panel, like, your personal life is always going to affect your professional life. And if him adapting to those changes will allow maybe his football to change as well.
Yeah, there was reports, wasn't there, just before Christmas that he sort of had to be a bit of a father to his sister and to his brother. I mean, that must take a huge amount of toll on him. And it's interesting how much time you give a person from the class of '92, because Manchester United love a homegrown to do well. I look at Jesse Lingard and I think, I didn't know he was 27. But what I think someone like Jesse Lingard would benefit from is like a Roy Keane in the changing room. Come on, and but at the moment, I look at that United squad, it's so young, and all of a sudden, he's a senior player. And that must be quite hard to get your head around as well. Like Rashford, senior player, but still quite young. And United don't have the 30-plus players in their squad, and I wonder if that sort of takes its toll as well.
He can play in a number of different positions. I mean, Dave, you talked about his England form. What do you think his best position is? Because he was more central in that World Cup, wasn't he? Whereas before, he's always been seen as a winger. Yeah,
I think so. And I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer mentioned it in the clip that we saw there about his performances against Manchester City and against Tottenham Hotspur in those great victories for Manchester United were really encouraging. And particularly in the game against Manchester City, his intensity off the ball was a real asset for United in that game. But yeah, it was the central midfield position in the World Cup where he obviously excelled for England. But you can understand why he hasn't perhaps nailed down a position for his club as of yet.
Yeah, and we touched on it as well there, Dave, that his friendship with Paul Pogba. I mean, can that be a good thing if they both stay, that atmosphere in the dressing room, if they're good friends, widen their circle and can help things off the pitch?
Listen to me, you need leadership. You're going to need those sort of senior figures because they're both outlandish personalities. You can see that whether you've met them personally or you see that through their social media. They're both loud, they're both extroverts, as they turn around and say. So those immediate personalities within a changing room are going to attract attention, and when they talk, you're going to listen. Now, having both of those type of players happy in your setup is going to do a lot better for your changing room than it's ever going to be negative. So I just think, especially because of their close relationship, the keys to both of them is making them understand each other and keeping them both happy as a pair.
Yeah, keep your tweets coming in on this, by the way. I mean, there is one here from Mark who says, Jesse Lingard has to go. He isn't even championship level right now. I think he's only talking about his form. Certainly doesn't think he's championship level, full stop, I'm sure. Anyone would be an upgrade to him right now. It's quite a harsh one there from Mark. But keep those tweets coming in, hashtag transfer talk, and we will read a few of those out. But now I think it's time for State of Play with Dave.
Chelsea head coach Frank Lampard has confirmed Olivier Giroud could leave Chelsea in January. Despite newspaper reports linking Jagiello Soyuncu with a move to Manchester City, we understand that isn't the case and that the club have no interest in signing the defender in this transfer window. Napoli are interested in signing Tottenham defender Jan Vertonghen. He is free to speak to foreign clubs this month. Now he's entered the final 6 months of his deal. However, it's understood he is open to discussing a new deal at Spurs. Arsenal remain interested in Bayern Munich defender Jerome Boateng, according to Sky in Germany. Our understanding is that Arsenal are unlikely to make additions that require significant investment to their squad this month. That's because they've committed close to £150 million in transfer fees over the summer. Barnsley are set to sign Wolfsburger midfielder Marcel Ritzmaier. Cardiff City and Bristol City are showing an interest in the Coventry midfielder Zane Westbrook. The 23-year-old midfielder came through the Chelsea youth system and has caught the eye in League One this season.
Right, plenty to come. Keep using that hashtag transfer talk. Next up, should Jan Vertonghen stay at Tottenham, and will Steve Bruce be busy this month? Yeah, the chat about Jesse Lingard has got you all tweeting in on hashtag transfer talk. There's one here from Rich who says, why is the panel beating around the bush and making excuses for Lingard? He's not good enough, simple as that. This is Manchester United that we're talking about. There's someone here with no name. We should get rid of Lingard as soon as possible. Never did anything good for Manchester United and never will. But this one here, Taylor, is far more positive. Lingard has to stay. He will get better. Every player has a period that they play very good, is what Taylor has said. And there's Ron here suggests that Lingard should go abroad to the Bundesliga. Can't see him getting into the United team at the moment, and that league would suit him. Right, OK. Time now for Stay or Go. You've all got your little boards there, have you? Come on, pick them up.
Come on, Bridgie, man.
Oh, Keith, this first time you've done it, isn't it? Right, OK. On the subject of Stay or Go today is Tottenham defender Jan Vertonghen. OK, should he stay at Tottenham Hotspur?
I'm just waiting to see Bridgie's
answer. Should he go this month?
Show me, Bridge.
Well, that's a surprise, Michael.
Why?
Put it up, hold it up. There you go.
Oh, no, just to be controversial then.
Oh, what? So we almost had a full house of stay. Well, Michael, I'll have to go to you for the stay on
Thanks,
Vertonghen.
Tom. It's been poor at the back for Tottenham. Only one clean sheet under Jose Mourinho at the moment, and Jan has been part of that defence. However, in his defence, he has been playing sort of a left of the three sometimes, or as left back, and he's been preferred over Danny Rose. The goals Spurs have conceded have not been good. It's not been good enough. But I think it's an all-round team problem at the moment. Look, if Napoli came in and he fancies it, then good luck to him. But from what I understand is that he and Toby Alderweireld wanted to sign new contracts. One out of the two have already signed that contract, and I wouldn't be surprised if one day or next few days, that Vertonghen does the same. But however, some fans are actually talking on social media. It might be time for him to have a change, but on a personal level, try another league, try Italy. He's been at Tottenham since 2012. He's one of Tottenham's longest-serving players.
Well, Keith, you agree that he should stay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really in the business of telling players they should leave football clubs, so that's why I said stay. But yeah, it is a difficult one. We saw him yesterday at Middlesbrough, didn't he? And he was very high up the pitch. Ashley Fletcher, championship player, got in behind him and scored. In fact, Jonathan Woodgate, the Middlesbrough manager, actually said they played on that. They'd seen that in previous games, and that was something that led to their goal. But without doubt, he's a Jose Mourinho type player. As you saw with Alderweireld, he got a new deal. Interesting to see if Vertonghen gets one. But his age and his experience is the sort of player that Mourinho was crying out for when he was at Manchester United. So I do think he'll stay. But it'll be interesting to see. He's certainly going to have to not maybe change his game, or Spurs are going to have to change the way they play, I think.
There's a couple of tweets come in. Ozzy says that Jan Vertonghen should be shipped on. His legs are going game by game. Time for a younger option. Froda says that Vertonghen needs a centre-back with pace beside him to continue being competitive. As Alderweireld has already signed a new contract, he thinks that Vertonghen should also be moved on. And JD, you did actually say go. I don't think you actually think that, but
It's not about whether I think it. I genuinely think it's in the balance as to whether or not Vertonghen wants to stay or wants to go. I do remember hearing an interview quite recently saying that he likes staying at his clubs for a long period of time. He stayed at Ajax for 6 years. 8 years now at Spurs, as you said, man. So I just think at 32, if you're going to make that decision again to say, I want to settle into a new city, a new environment, this is the best time. He's done everything he needs to do in terms of his legacy at Spurs. Spurs fans are never going to forget how solid that relationship was between Vertonghen and Alderweireld, and how it's basically been the springboard for the successes that you've had after that. So I think from that standpoint, at 32 years old, this is really the chance for him to say, maybe a different environment.
Well, Taylor's been back in touch, says stay. Spurs need experience at the back. And someone who's a Moussa Sissoko fan says Jan is finished. He can't be able to keep up with the pace.
Well,
in the
what's
Premier League
interesting,
at the moment.
Tom, is that he was captain yesterday. So Harry Kane is out for quite some time. Hugo Lloris is out till February. So yesterday there was Alderweireld on the pitch, there was Eric Dyer on the pitch, but Jose Mourinho went with Jan Vertonghen.
That says everything,
that speaks
doesn't
volumes
it?
to me.
And it was significant as well that Jose Mourinho said that his team selection would be based around players' long-term futures. So we've seen Toby Alderweireld be given a new contract. We're obviously, he was in the team, and then now obviously Jan Vertonghen the team, not quite yet signed this new contract. If it's going to happen, and then obviously Christian Eriksen has been in and out, not in the team for the first half of the season, now back in the team. Does that suggest there's a new contract coming in? On Jose Mourinho, he's obviously got a long-term record or a track record of getting the best
Not going to do it.
out of veteran defenders. You look at Pepe and Carvalho at Real Madrid. He had Materazzi, Javier Zanetti at Inter Milan. Won all the trophies, shed load of trophies, and he's got a track record of getting the best out of defenders at that age.
Just interesting as well, Dave and I went to Tottenham Villa at the start of the season.
Here we go.
The team news came in.
Story time.
No Jan Vertonghen. And I was really intrigued. I thought, oh no, Vertonghen's injured. No! But then they spoke to Maurizio Pochettino. He said, no, he's just not in my 18. He's not trained well enough. He's not done enough for me. And is that Pochettino saying, he's not the player he was for me? And there was a few weeks where he wasn't in the Tottenham team. He did come back, did work hard, but it'll be interesting to see next few weeks.
I think you've just talked yourself into changing your mind there,
I think
Michael.
he did.
Right.
I think he did.
I think you might have. I think you did.
No, I
That might
wanted
be
to stay.
50-50.
Wanted to
Right.
stay.
OK, I tell you what, Newcastle fans, get in touch right now, because this section is going to be dedicated to you. Hashtag Transfer Talk on Twitter. And our Newcastle expert, our North East reporter, Keith Downey, is with us. And Keith, before we get into any sort of specific areas of concern for Newcastle in terms of their positions, they have been decimated by injuries.
Yeah.
Does that force not only Steve Bruce's hand, but Mike Ashley and Lee Charney's as well?
Well, the injuries have been defensive, haven't they? I mean, Steve Bruce went into that FA Cup tie at the weekend against Rochdale, missing 10 players. 5 of their 6 centre-halves.
We've got a list of the players who are injured, actually.
So 5 of their 6 centre-halves were out for that match.
Wow.
Jamal Lascelles, the captain, Fabian Schär, Kieran Clark, Paul Dummett, Jetro Williams and Javi Manquillo were all out. So they only had one recognised central defender, and defence is where Steve Bruce has been saying for a long time that they're strong. Now, the good news is that Clark and Dummett are back in training and should return for the match this weekend against West Ham, and Jamal Lascelles is close to return as well. And also, you'll see on that list there, John Joe Shelvey, Dwight Gale, Alan St-Maximin and Andy Carroll. Those 4 more attacking players all missed the match against Rochdale, and Steve Bruce actually played his strongest possible team because he wants to do well in the Cups. So he was missing 10, and then Miguel Almiron, who was at this time last year the club's record signing, actually hobbled off early in the second half. So he doesn't have his problems to seek when it comes to injuries. In terms of what that means for the transfer window, I think because Clark and Dummett are back this week, he's maybe got just enough to see him through defensively. But he does want to add, out with defence, he wants to add a midfielder, and he wants to add a striker.
Well, let's talk about the strikers then, because Ellie Webber has been in touch saying Keith, are Newcastle going to buy a striker at this January transfer window? And she's not the only one, because Brett says Newcastle need to do everything they can do to get Morales from Rangers, maybe part exchange for Gale. Alfredo Morales would. His game would suit Newcastle's playing style. Is a striker. I mean, what they got? Carroll, Gale, and Joe Linton.
Yeah.
They're the only 3.
Yeah.
So, do you think Steve Bruce would like a striker if he can get one?
Oh, desperate for a striker.
Oh.
Absolutely desperate. That's his one priority, and I think he wants a big, bustling number 9 that can hold the ball up pretty much in the way that Salomon Rondon did under Rafa Benitez. I think that's a player that actually Steve Bruce would have quite liked. There is an interest. They are tracking a whole host of strikers right now. 2 of those, Michou Batshuayi at Chelsea and Olivier Giroud, they're certainly on his list. You would think Morelos would be on that list as well. I actually was on a Newcastle podcast not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I said he has everything that they need because they play the 5-4-1 or the 3-5-1 with a player off, and I think Morelos would be phenomenal.
I think Steven Gerrard would be furious
That you
if
said
Rangers sold Morelos in January in the best title race the Scottish Premiership has seen for some time.
I mean, Michael, that's not going to happen now.
No.
There is no way Rangers will allow him to leave now. They just couldn't afford, just like Celtic couldn't afford to lose Odsonne Edouard. Neither of those players will go until the end of the season at the earliest. But I just mean in terms of long term, that is a sort of player that I think would do well for Newcastle United.
But that fan base, they deserve it because they're so loyal. You see it not only on social media, but the way they support their team week in, week out. So they do deserve that big.
Well, They do, and the difficult situation right now is you've got a club record signing in Joe Linton, who we've seen scored 1 goal since he arrived back in September away against Spurs.
Yep.
He played against Rochdale at the weekend. Everyone thought this is an opportunity, get a couple of goals under your belt, and then hopefully the confidence is going to flow from there. He missed 2 or 3 really, really good chances. One simple one and one that he put wide, and it actually left some of the Newcastle supporters, or many of them, actually chanting, "You're not fit to wear the shirt." This is a guy who cost £40 million, Joe Linton, and Steve Bruce is having to play him because Dwight Gale had a knock at the weekend. He's probably going to go out this window, whether on loan or a permanent sale. And you've got Andy Carroll, who isn't fit enough to play every week. So all their hopes are on this man, Joe Linton. So without doubt, they need someone else, and they need someone who can go in straight away. So that is why the likes of Giroud and Batshuayi, and I've heard Glenn Murray mentioned earlier today. So that's why these guys, because these are sorts of guys who can go straight in and make a difference. At the moment, they're pretty much playing, I hate to say it, without a striker, because Joe Linton's head is so far down that he needs to be taken out and given a break.
Yeah, I knew that when we asked for Newcastle fans' opinions, they would tweet in their droves. So thank you for all of them. Jake says Newcastle have to sign a striker and another midfielder. If we don't, we'll be very close to going down. Our defence can't be the only ones to score goals. Actually, their centre backs have been scoring goals, particularly Fabian Schär, haven't they? There's another one for Odson Edouard as well. Actually, so talk about Morelos, it's Edouard as well. Cody says these injuries are hurting us at Newcastle. Signings need to be made. We need to be looking for young, hungry players that can keep up with the pace of the Premier League, have the desire to win games for the club. In my opinion, a midfielder is needed. Santa says that Newcastle should attempt to sign.
He's working late.
Has he got a clause in his contract?
They
Have you thought about that on the spot? Is that really that? You just said that.
No, it's good enough. Fair play. That was good.
I'll be giving him that one, really.
By the way, do you want to know who Santa says they should sign? Eddie Nketiah on loan is who he or she says.
Santa Cruz.
Newcastle. Oh, another one for Eddie Nketiah on loan as well. So loads of Newcastle fans getting in touch, and basically all of them are saying that they do need a striker. And there's one from Carlo says Glenn Murray, short-term move.
Yeah,
for Newcastle.
I mean, there's a lot of names doing the rounds, but I can pretty much guarantee that Steve Bruce will add a striker this window. It's imperative they get someone in. He knows it, and he's even said that. He said he's got a couple of plates spinning at the moment, so let's see which one.
And in defence to Bruce, he put out a full-strength side at Rochdale. They've just had a busy Christmas period. Well, he didn't miss those chances. That team was good enough to beat Rochdale, with the greatest respect in the world.
I do have to give him credit as well.
The fans want a cup run, and he is a Newcastle fan, so fair enough. Keith, what's it like you cover a region, the North East, all right, which is everybody knows how much people from the North East love their football. It can really affect their week, the Sunderland and Newcastle result. What's it like working in that area?
Interesting, I would say.
Difficult?
Yeah, it can be difficult because when things aren't going well, if there's not any noise or any word coming from the club, it kind of turns on you a little bit. So if you're quite active on social media and you're speaking to the supporters, they kind of almost turn their anger on you because they feel like you're the only one listening or the only one speaking to them. But listen, they've been starved of success for so long. Those supporters deserve something, just like the Sunderland supporters as well. 2 absolutely massive clubs, 2 massive institutions, and you have to feel for the supporters, you really do. And
there's a tear in his eye.
There's been a tear in my eye constantly for the past 5 years, JD. We just keep going down the list.
I was out with Keith in Newcastle, and it was a bit like Santa's Grotto, a whole list of Newcastle fans asking Keith what he's going to do.
And I know nothing. But I mean, listen, I wish I'd been covering the team in the time of the entertainers, when Alan Shearer made his world record transfer, when they got to the Champions League. I could only imagine what the buzz was around the city at the time. Sadly, there isn't that now. The fans are very negative, and I can understand why. And it's just a shame that Newcastle now are trying to just exist and stay in the Premier League rather than shooting for the stars. But just a point you made, Michael, earlier, I do say that I discount Steve Bruce from that because he wants to do something. He wants to win a trophy. He wants to see some silverware back there. Hence why he played his strongest possible team at the weekend. Now, there were 10 missing, but he still put players in there who are struggling for fitness and who probably needed a rest. So fair play to him. They're still in the cup. You never know. They might still do something, but they're going to have to improve massively from that performance against Rochdale.
The Newcastle fans all accuse you of supporting Sunderland. The Sunderland fans all accuse you of supporting Newcastle. I can assure you, Keith is neither. Right, OK, plenty. On the way, we'll be live to Manchester. Are they after a new centre-back? City, that is. That's next. As promised, we're going to go to Manchester City now in their latest transfer news. Will they sign a centre-back? this month. Well, reports of Kaglar Soyuncu moving there have been dismissed by the club, and Ben Ransom is right across this story. We can speak to him now. Good afternoon to you, Ben. It sounds like there's no chance of this happening, well, this month at least.
Yeah, hi Tom. No, that's exactly the information I'm getting at this end. I think the reports emerged, didn't they, on Saturday that Manchester City had actually made a bid for Leicester's Kaglar Soyuncu. Now, he's a player that we told you a few weeks back they had looked at, but that can cover a number of potential targets because Manchester City are still looking very much for that central defender to come in to replace Vincent Kompany. It's a position they targeted in the summer. Obviously, they tried to get Harry Maguire quite seriously, but that didn't happen, did it? And he ended up at Manchester United. And then City didn't see the value. They couldn't find a target suitable to come in at that point, so they just let it run, as it were, happy with their options, always thinking that maybe Fernandinho, Eric Garcia, Rodri, even as we've seen this year, can step in and play there. But yeah, as for Soyuncu, that kind of report did emerge, but it was quickly shut down. Not only that there was no bid, but also there's no interest in City making that kind of a move in this window. And it does kind of echo what Pep Guardiola has been saying for the last few weeks. He's a man who often tries to deflect transfer questions. Some managers enjoy talking about it, others don't. Pep Guardiola, I think, is in the don't category. Certainly doesn't like mentioning individuals, but he's been very clear that they will not be trying to buy a central defender in this January window because, as far as the club see it, there just isn't the value available and they can't get the sort of player, the quality of player they would need to improve the squad.
Ben, just stay where you are for now. Just going to come back in just a moment. I just want to ask the transfer team about the emergence of Kaglar Soyuncu, because we all sat here in the summer and we thought Leicester might need a centre-back. We didn't know, Keith, just how good this player was going to be. He's been a revelation.
His story's been amazing, hasn't it? He was brought in, everyone kind of forgot about him, a bit like, I suppose, Filip Benkovic, who's been out on loan a couple of times as well. He then had to sit there and watch as Leicester desperately tried to hold on to Harry Maguire, and he went, and I think everyone was like, how are they going to replace him? And that was the question. And then in he came with his brilliant flowing hair, and he's just been an absolute revelation. He's made that position his own, hasn't he? He's been, honestly, he must be one of the players of the season so far.
Never heard you talk about my hair like that. Quite upset.
You need to grow up a little bit.
Get some stats in here. If you look this season, I mean, 20 matches, played 8 clean sheets there. The Leicester defence has been very good. Dual success rate of 64%. And also look at that, but he has been dribbled past 13 times, which is actually quite a lot there. They're not perfect stats, but certainly he has been very, very good for Leicester this season, a little bit better than we all expected. Right, let's go back to Ben Ransom now, because Ben, I know you're going to be speaking to Pep Guardiola later on. I can see that you're in the media room right now. Can we expect any deals this month?
Well, Pep's been quite clear to say no. I mean, obviously, he's a man who, by his own admission, never say never. Look, if the right deal came along, if the right player was there at the right price, then, of course, Manchester City wouldn't hesitate in buying them. They know the areas they need to strengthen. We've mentioned centre-half. They've looked at left-backs as well. At some point, they've got to look for a striker, haven't they, with Sergio Aguero coming towards the end of his Manchester City career. But this month, certainly, there's no plan to do it immediately. Pep Guardiola told us a couple of weeks ago that the club's strategy at the moment is to look to the summer. That's what they're doing. They're putting plans in place right now. That's probably why we're hearing these kind of reports of City looking at X or Y, because they're looking to try and get that list together of summer targets. Chiki Begiristan will be working really hard behind the scenes to make sure that they get those targets early, because all clubs, certainly the big clubs, like to have their business done early because, let's be honest, for most of them, they don't have much of a pre-season, do they? We've got the Euros in the summer. They always come back and end up on pre-season tour, travelling halfway across the world, and it suits them. Obviously, the managers, they have to try and integrate them into their tactical style. They need to get them in early, and that's something Manchester City have done pretty well in recent summers. We're expecting them to spend fairly big in the summer. I think we all get the sense around Manchester City that it's a summer of probable regeneration as they look to just try and reinvigorate this squad, try and catch up the gap to Liverpool. But certainly, I think this window, I'd be very, very surprised if Manchester City brought in anyone, certainly anyone to challenge for the first team. That's not to say they might not bring someone in for the group. We've seen that before, but I think a first team signing is probably pretty unlikely.
Ben, great stuff. Thank you. Right, OK, so we're talking there about Manchester City and talking about Soyuncu. Well, talking of Leicester centre-backs, they're interested in the Juventus centre-back, Mehdi Demiral, and they're considering the possibility of a loan deal for the Turkey international. Leicester's recruitment team have spoken to Soyuncu about the qualities of his countryman as they look to strengthen their defensive options following the departure of Harry Maguire, as we've been saying, to Manchester United in the summer. It's thought that Leicester's preference is to see how Demiral would adjust to life in the Premier League before committing to a substantial deal. And reports in Italy say that Juventus have already turned down an offer of £34 million for Demiral from Borussia Dortmund. Michael, can you see why Leicester would be going for another centre-back?
Well, in the summer on this show, we heard Brendan Rodgers say, if we had an extra centre-half we brought in, then I'd be happy. But if we didn't, we're not going to panic. And they're not going to panic at all. They're second in the league. It's gone so well for Leicester City, and fair play to them. Every week it seems to be pretty much the same 11. Now, you'd say, well, they've been slightly fortunate in terms of lack of injuries, but it only takes a couple of injuries, one of their centre-halves. I mean, what a brilliant signing Johnny Evans has been. We don't really talk about Johnny Evans much.
£3 million.
What an absolutely brilliant signing he's been. I remember Arsenal were linked with him, Manchester City were linked with him. He's been fantastic. But this is a Leicester side, a Leicester squad, a Leicester team who just seem so settled, secure, all under Brendan Rodgers. He's done a fabulous job. I get the impression that they're not panicking. But if they add one more in a busy period, then they'd certainly take it.
Yeah, I think if you look at Leicester's recent transfer business, Dave, we talked about Evans being an absolute bargain. We've talked about Soyuncu as well. The right back, Ricardo Pereira, he's worth far more than they paid for him. James Maddison, definitely the same as well. And of course, Yuri Tielemans as well. Ayoze Perez. They seem to sign these players who do very well and their values always go up, which is what every sort of sporting director of football, chairman, that's what they want. Leicester's transfer model seems to be working.
Yeah, and I mean, Michael mentioned about them going in for another centre-back. It was interesting that he played 3 at the back against Newcastle. I know they switched to 4 again in the FA Cup, but if he wants to go back to 3 at the back, then perhaps he might think that his options are a little bit limited. But then this January window is significant for a lot of clubs because they're not just looking at this window, they're looking at the next window and the window after that. And you have to think that Leicester might well be shopping in a different market in the summer if Champions League football is secured. So it'd be interesting if Leicester went into the market now for a centre-back when potentially they could be going for a different tier of player in the summer transfer window with Champions League football to go on. And one other point as well is that if Leicester do go into the market now, it's always better to go in from a position of strength. And Leicester are in a position of strength. They don't need to go into the market desperately to sign a player like some of the other clubs in the Premier League, and therefore the club that they're buying from knows that they're desperate for a player, so they might add a couple more million or a couple more clauses onto the deal. Leicester, if they do go in, will go in from a position of strength. They're playing very well, and they know they don't actually, if push came to shove, need to sign anybody.
What I admire about Leicester is you look at it the year they won the title, you look at the team they've got now, they're 11, and their squad, it's actually quite different to when they won the title. You look at their title rivals that year, Spurs, and I look at it and think, Vertonghen, Ali, Dyer, Son, Kane, it's the same players. And you see Tottenham each week, Jose switching the team every week. He's not happy with what he's got. And I look at this Leicester side, always trying to move on, always trying to be better.
I just think we don't give them enough credit, especially their average age as well. Think about how young some of those players we're talking about as potential. I mean, Maddison is of age. I mean,
Chilwell,
Ndidi, Tielemans, they're all going to grow up together. Damari Gray, they're all going to grow up with Ricardo Pereira. The names continue and go on. I haven't even mentioned Ben Chilwell. These guys are all going to grow up together and have their best years ahead of them with a coach that wants to play attacking football, a coach that's keen for developing young players as well.
If he can keep them together.
If he can keep them together.
Exactly.
That's the key point, though.
Yeah, well, let's get to Aston Villa now because we discussed Newcastle earlier on and Keith mentioned Olivier Giroud, a player that could well be of interest to Aston Villa as well, their boss Dean Smith. They also remain in the market for a goalkeeper but refused to confirm whether he'd earmarked a move for former England #1 Joe Hart. OK, Dave, this is your area of expertise. How many signings do you think Villa fans can expect?
The people on Twitter might not think it's my area of expertise. Well, I think initially, at the start of the window, Dean Smith was looking at 1, maybe 2 signings, a striker and a winger, or a striker that can play on the wing. But then the plans for this January window have been completely thrown out the window. Serious injuries to Tom Heaton, out for the season. Wesley, the striker, out for the season. Arguably, some Villa fans might say the most important of the players that is out injured at the moment is John McGinn, who's out for 3 months. And you look at the team that they fielded against Fulham in the FA Cup, where they were beaten by 2 worldie goals, really. Jonathan Codger started up front, and I think the consensus among the away support from the game at the weekend was that he didn't do enough in that game. So there's no doubt that Dean Smith is looking for a striker. He's also looking for a winger, if possible. Now, with the Tom Heaton injury, there's a list of goalkeepers being pulled together that could potentially fill Tom Heaton's place. I think it's worked out well, the experience that Tom Heaton brought. Orjan Newland is the man in position to take the #1 jersey at the moment. But if there is a more experienced goalkeeper out there, I think Villa will be looking at that most definitely.
I just think about £134 million. That's a lot of money to spend. In this financial fair play market, that is a lot of money to spend. And at this point, do you not feel like financially they're constrained to the teams that they have with them already?
We saw the exact same thing last season with Fulham,
exactly.
didn't we? Like, they tried to throw a team together like that, and look what happened. But the three that you mentioned there, Dave, Heaton, McGinn and Wesley, all out until the end of the season. I've just listed 10 injuries for Newcastle. That's worse, having the 3 of them out to the season.
Yeah.
At least with the Newcastle 10, they might be coming back.
Just one more thing before we move on. You can't say doing a Fulham to the Villa fans, because that will just...
Do you not see his reaction? His reaction.
Which is obviously...
I thought he was going to fight you.
Where are you off to? Tell us what you're doing.
Come over here, because you've had your A's, you've had your Aston Villa. I'm going to go on to the B's now. Burnley, here we go. We've been making our way through each team in the Premier League and telling you who needs what. And it is the turn of Burnley. Well, we understand it's a box-to-box midfielder they'll target, but will they get it? Well, manager Sean Dyche says he has a very small list of targets he can write on the back of a postage stamp. Well, this summer delivery, Danny Drinkwater, is heading back to Chelsea after an unsuccessful loan spell. Dyche says not to expect any outgoings, but hasn't completely ruled out a new arrival. But this is what I find very interesting from Dyche at the weekend. He revealed he enjoyed shopping in the Championship, in the lower leagues, but a player value in the Championship to such an extent, but they might be priced now out of the market. He says there's no longer bargains, there's big fees in the Championship.
Yeah, and that strategy, like you say, Michael, might have to change for Sean Dyche. But you said at the start there how Danny Drinkwater, as his loan has been terminated. Dave, he barely played for Burnley, so do they really need to replace him if they weren't playing him when he was there?
There's a definite argument for that, and central midfield now is something obviously that Michael mentioned that they're looking at, and Drinkwater could end up going somewhere else in this window. There's obviously interest from, we talked about Aston Villa there as a potential replacement for John McGinn. So yeah, I mean, you look at Burnley. I mean, I don't want to get too nerdy on you, but you look at their expected goals this season, and they're not quite converting as they should be. So whether that is a creative from midfield problem, or whether that's you can't really complain about the form of their strikers this season. So whether Sean Dyche has identified a creative midfielder as something that he's...
Don't worry about being a nerd, Dave. That's absolutely fine. Stephen Defour...
Coming from you.
Stephen Defour was an ex-Burnley player. Now, he, for me, is a real box-to-box Belgian international. He suffered a number of injuries. That's a player who probably Burnley put quite a bit of money in onto the wages, but he barely played with his injuries. So this box-to-box they're kind of looking at probably has been going on for quite a while now.
Yeah, well, we have to move on, but just one more, because Santa, who said that Newcastle should sign Eddie Nketiah on loan, is now saying that Aston Villa should sign Eddie Nketiah on loan. I think he's just a big fan of Nketiah, or he's winding us up. Right, next up, we'll tell you who is on Chelsea's list of transfer targets. I know what Santa will say.
Time for the second part of Who Needs What, and we are focusing on Chelsea now. Now, this is a key window for them. Their transfer ban has been reduced and now they can go into the market. They want a centre-back, number 1 on that list. Nathan Ake is the obvious choice. He's at Bournemouth, but Chelsea have that buyback clause in the contract which allows them to re-sign him for £40 million. Should they activate that now? They also may want cover at left-back as well. Marcos Alonso, Emerson Palmieri haven't nailed down that position, really. Is that something Frank Lampard might address now, or would he potentially wait until the summer. Then there's the striker situation. Number 2 on that list there, Olivier Giroud and Michy Batshuayi need minutes. They've got the European Championships coming up. Will either one of those be allowed to leave in this window? We understand they are willing to pay £34 million for the Lyon striker Moussa Dembélé, but the French club have made it clear they don't want to do business. And what happens suddenly if Jadon Sancho becomes available? It could be a significant time for Frank Lampard and Chelsea supporters over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, OK, well, let's look into Chelsea there now. A couple of tweets have come in as you were talking there, Dave. Sumith says, wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea signed a big-name striker, even if he joined in the summer, maybe Timo Werner. There's Elsa. She says Chelsea should sign Vedat Muriqi before Tottenham snatch him. With Batshuayi and Giroud rumoured to leave, a strong striker may be useful. He's a Kosovan striker, actually doing well at the moment at Fenerbahce. He is. But Moussa Dembélé was mentioned then on Friday. We were talking about Keith, and I know you weren't in. What would he bring?
Well, it's amazing to see. Well, it's amazing to see the transformation in him. First of all, I watched him in Scotland play a number of times for Celtic, and I know that before he went to Celtic, he had big injury problems, really big injury problems, and I think a couple of his moves elsewhere kind of broke down as a result of that. But he's gone to Celtic, he's proved himself, he's reinvented himself really as a number 9, and he's only been in France for a short time, hasn't he? Now we're told Chelsea want him, we're told that they're willing to pay £34 million for him, which actually in the face of it isn't really that much. He kind of moved to Lyon from Celtic for not much less than that. One source has even told us that they've had one bid turned down, so they definitely want him. You could see him fitting into that team as a sort of Tammy Abraham with a little bit more muscle. You could really see it working, but I have to say it looks as though it's probably one for the summer rather than now. If Lyon's saying they aren't doing business, it looks as though it might be one they have to revisit in the summer, but you could see him playing for Chelsea. You really could in the way they play football. It's unbelievable for me to see the transformation, given the fact Celtic picked him up for a few £100,000 from Fulham.
Yeah. Another one that won't go away when it comes to Chelsea is Nathan Ake, Michael.
What a disaster that would be for Eddie Howe and Bournemouth if they lose Nathan Ake. But obviously it's a difficult situation if Chelsea have this buyback clause. But all of a sudden, Chelsea, with the transfer ban lifted, they're in a very good position in the league. They're still in the Champions League. They're still in the FA Cup. Does Frank Lampard want to add to a bit more experience? Someone who knows the club so well. Jody Morris will know him very well. Yeah. So you're looking at a pretty good deal if it does happen.
We mentioned this in the transfer podcast this week, but would it be the sensible decision for Chelsea to activate this 40 million buyback clause with a view to then selling on Nathan Ake in the summer for probably more money than what that activation clause would be? Because he's probably worth in the open market a little bit more than what Chelsea would get him back for. That's a cynical view.
Yeah, well, it is, but we've got some transfer news just into us now regarding West Ham, all right? We were talking about this on Friday. We're told that West Ham remain the preferred destination for Gedson Fernandes, the midfielder. Now, he's currently in Lisbon with his representatives. The deal is under consideration, and it's an 18-month loan with an option to buy. That's for West Ham. We also told you Manchester United and Everton are also looking at the player, but because of it's his family reasons, isn't it, that he would like to be in London. And he's also, was it you, Michael, who explained that he's got some friends in the West Ham?
He's got some friends in the academy. I think he's got 3 friends in the academy, which for a young Portuguese player might sway it for him. And obviously he's got his mother lives in London as well, which is obviously massive for him. Yeah,
well, West Ham, the preferred destination. Right, Keith, I think you may have some lines from the EFL, or, well, specifically Middlesbrough for us.
Yeah, well, we brought the news on Friday, I think it was, that West Ham, staying with West Ham, of course, had made a £2.5 million bid for the Middlesbrough goalkeeper, Darren Randolph. We told you that on Friday and told you that it had been rejected. It's our understanding that West Ham have come in with an increased offer for him, and it's close to £4 million. Now, that is my understanding is what Middlesbrough are looking for. They bought Randolph for £5 million, I think it was, 2.5 years ago. He's only got 18 months left in his contract. Middlesbrough really need the cash right now, and what they have seen in the last couple of months, they've won the last 4 in the league. And of course, terrific match yesterday against Spurs. They performed terrifically well, and in none of those matches Darren Randolph's played. He's actually been out with an injury. I'm told he's just getting back to training now, so he'll be ready to go back in and probably go in and take the number 1 position at West Ham, right, or certainly compete with Lucas Fabianski anyway. So yeah, it sounds as though that one's close. £4 million, so cutting the losses, £1 million less than they sold him bottom form from West Ham, ironically, 2.5 years ago. And David Moyes has said that he's admitted he's in for him and a number of goalkeepers, so it seems like that's the one. But Middlesbrough, in general, Patrick Roberts and Lucas Nmecha, both on loan from Manchester City, looks like they've done good business there. Roberts looked good against Spurs yesterday. Yes, they're going to lose Randolph, but the two younger players that have played in goals recently, Ainsley Pears, who's kept 4 clean sheets in a row, and then Thomas Mayhas, who played yesterday, have come in and done terrifically well. So I think that has allowed Middlesbrough to let him go.
Great stuff, Keith. Thank you. Right, OK, tomorrow, Good Morning Transfers is back at the usual time, 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. This show, Transfer Talk, is back again at the usual time, midday until 1 o'clock. And tonight, you've still got one more, the Transfer Show with Dharmesh and Carve, 7 p.m. Thank you to the transfer team today on Sky Sports News. Next, we'll bring you Pep Guardiola's news conference live next hour. And England are looking likely to level the Test series against South Africa in the cricket, although they haven't taken a wicket just yet.